cruising down Santa Monica Boulevard, and just up here to the left, here it is, Hollywood Forever. Just saw a sign for yoga. They're doing yoga in the cemetery now. I want to come visit Stella Stevens and Bob Kulick, who passed away within a couple of years of each other, so they waited until Stella passed before they put them in their final resting place. And I'm friends with Bob Kulick's brother, Bruce, and I'm going to visit him soon. Thought maybe he'd want to say something about them, and he said he would, so thought we'd come visit them today. Their final resting place, Stella Stevens and Bob Kulick. I know they were both cremated and are in a crypt like this, but I couldn't find any description of it online as to where it's at, so we'll have to look. Couldn't find where Stella and Bob were online, so I asked Bruce and he said in here. So here's the final resting place. I'm trying to get it so I don't have a tremendous glare. Stella Stevens is in this one on the right, and then Bob Kulick, guitar player for Meatloaf, and Kiss. So here's the final resting place of Stella Stevens, who sadly passed away from complications of Alzheimer's. I had talked to Bruce like 2 or 3 years ago, and he told me that they had to move her in there, and that she wasn't doing well. I said, oh, that's too bad. I would have loved to have talked to her. And they said, yeah, she's not really up for that these days any longer, but she was a legend in her day. I mean, she never really had any ambition to act when she was younger. She got married when she was like 16 years old and had a kid and went to school, went to college in Memphis. And while she was there, she got bit by the acting bug and ended up wanting to pursue that. Her and her husband got a divorce after a couple of years. His last name was Stevens. That's where the Stevens came from, but she changed the spelling of it to add the V to make it more of her own. But she basically asked her parents to watch her son, and then she went off to pursue a film career. She went off to pursue something that she thought would turn into a career. She was actually born Estelle Eggleston, not Stella Stevens. But she was modeling and working for Goldsmith's department store in Memphis, and she got a contract with 20th Century Fox from there. They were going to consider her for a role of playing Jean Harlow in a movie about her life. She ended up getting a film debut in the movie called Say One For Me, and it was something by Bing Crosby, and then she ended up getting fired like 6 months, and they canceled her contract. So Paramount ended up picking her up, putting her in Little Abner, and then she ended up winning a Golden Globe Award for the movie that she had made at 20th Century. Say One For Me, isn't that crazy? So she ended up being working with Bobby Darin in Too Late Blues. She was in Girls, Girls, Girls with Elvis. She was in The Courtship of Eddie's Father. She was in The Nutty Professor with Jerry Lewis. The Poseidon Adventure. The Secret of My Success with Dean Martin. She's had an amazing career. These are pictures of her out at her ranch when she owned a ranch. She owned that ranch for a long, long time, actually. You can see that was a very avid part of her lifestyle. Here's one of her awards. And then there's her urn of ashes. There's some pictures of her career. You can see up in the top with Jerry Lewis and the Nutty Professor. Gosh, she was a very beautiful woman. She ended up meeting Bob Kulick, and they were together from 1984 until he passed away. which was, I believe, 2020. He ended up living with her in Beverly Hills, and then when her health became really bad, they sold the house, and she went into a kind of a nursing home facility.
The one and only Stella Stunning.
My name is Stella Stunning. I'm your sweetheart of the sky. Folks who jet with me say it's the only way to fly.
Bob was definitely a legend in his own right. He worked a lot with Paul Stanley, with Kiss. He was originally the first guitar player that they were going to select when Kiss started. They had basically given him the job, as the story goes, and then Ace Frehley walked in with 2 mismatched Converse shoes and kind of a crazy wardrobe style, and they thought maybe he would be a little bit more appropriate than a bald guy, because Bob always had that look, and during that time it was hair, and Bob had the skills and he had everything else, but just didn't have the hair, unfortunately, and Ace got the job. But Bob continued to work, like I said, with Paul Stanley, Kiss, for many years. He was the guitar player for Meatloaf and is in a lot of the old Meatloaf videos, things like that. He put together a lot of compilations, was a producer for many, many years. And there you can see 2 of Bob's guitar picks and also the necklace that he always wore. And he's wearing it in this photo I'm going to show you. And his ashes are in the road case behind that glass acknowledgement for them.
One of the things that I learned when I played with Alice Cooper from the other guitar player, Dick Wagner, was this little trick. So you take your little, and then you grab the string itself, and you just pull on it. And that's how I made that horrendous noise that starts the solo.
Now we're going to go ahead and turn it over to Bruce Kulick, the brother of Bob Kulick, and let him talk about his brother Bob and Stella.
Well, it's very interesting that my brother, being a musician, of course, and he was quite successful, and we grew up in New York, so he's doing things in recording studios in Manhattan. And I believe somehow, and I don't really know why Stella was at one of the studios, but he was recording and doing something, and she met him, and next thing I know, he tells me that he met Stella Stevens, and of course I knew who that was, and they were going to hook up, and I was just like, oh my God, that's amazing. And not only did they hook up, they started to seriously be together, and with Stella having a home in Beverly Hills, and Bob, of course, living in New York, had a nice apartment there. The 2 of them did the bi-coastal kind of thing. And I think she was at that time of her career where she wasn't super busy, but she was always loved music. And the fact that she could be around Bob and everything was exciting for her. And I know my brother was probably out of his mind to be romantically involved with a famous, beautiful star like Stella.
Former playmate.
Yes. So then eventually Bob sold the place in New York, and my nickname was Hollywood Bob, and there he moves in Beverly Hills to, and the reason why I call it Hollywood Bob and not Beverly Hills Bob is just, obviously Stella was always involved with many functions, and she had many parties at the home with celebrities, and then she was still, of course, active with her career to varying degrees, depending on what was being offered and what was going on. So they had their relationship, and it was, it took me a few more years to move out to California, and then of course to visit them at this large home in Beverly Hills.
Did she still have the ranch at that time, or?
Yes, she would have had that ranch that on occasion I knew Bob would go up there, and she was into horses. I remember she had some in the California area that I could go visit, and she took Bob in a lot of, I'm telling the story more from the photos than my personal, experience, but she took Bob to all the special events, the celebrity golf this and the parties. There was some I was able to go to because I was very active and busy with Kiss, of course, and touring. One of the obvious problems that happens is, especially for a playmate, type of actress who then was very legitimate with some of the movies she did. Between,
Yeah.
You know, the Elvis and the
Dean Martin and
Dean Martin was how does she continue to be relevant? And then of course the Poseidon Adventure was very popular for her too, but she's still a starlet in that, you know.
yeah.
But she worked really hard at trying different things, and I have to give her credit for that. And I'm also aware now, knowing much more in hindsight since her passing, how not everything was bared fruit. You know, not everything moved forward. But you know, we found things like a lot of recipe books that she was even involved with, cookbooks, right, Lisa?
Well, can you mentioned to me like you found a wolf mask, and you're like, we didn't know what that was.
Yeah, and you know, again, because Bob had whatever wasn't offered that was considered really valuable at the big Julian's or Butterfield auctions when they realized they need to sell this stuff. Some things weren't included or wouldn't have done anything.
Yeah.
But then we find out actually from her son Andrew that was like a movie concept that she was working on that didn't go anywhere. From what we saw, I'm not so surprised it didn't go anywhere. It was a little left field, you know. But she actually transforms into a werewolf in this idea she had for a film. You know?
Yeah. So they were together from like 84 is what I read. Does that sound about right?
Maybe even a little earlier, 82. Might have been, I'm not even sure. It's you. 82.
Now, you were telling me sadly that Stella ended up getting ill and they sold the house. What ended up happening to her?
So, you know, by the time I would say even 2011 or 12, she started to show a degradation of like knowing things and taking care of herself. And that was really hard for my brother and anybody around them at the time. And it obviously, those things progress, unfortunately, this kind of dementia. And by 2015, it was critical enough to recognize that they had to sell the home.
Yeah, and then she couldn't.
Right. No, she
needed
no way
care.
She could handle herself. I know there was one very, it was kind of sad, but it was great that we got to go to like a Christmas lunch around the holidays in Studio City where I lived. And I remember just Bob and I going to use the restroom and leaving her with Lisa, who she knew Lisa. She right away reacted to that in a very negative way. She got very nervous and was telling, where is he? Where is he? You know.
Oh, like she was being abandoned or, okay.
And Lisa knew exactly how to handle it. I don't know how, but she did. She calmed it down. But the behavior was where she would need professional help, and that it was best served by getting her into a really nice place in Hollywood, West Hollywood actually. So when they sold the house and she moved into there, and then Bob realized I should take care of her, but that's not a relationship. I remember him getting a lot of help from the people who are pros with what it is when your significant other becomes that severely ill with dementia and Alzheimer's.
When you told me, you said he's very, very loving and was good with animals, but to like a human, it was so hard for him to cope with that.
It was very hard, and if anything, he overcompensated by making sure she always had these friends who were hired, of course, to hang out with her, to the point where it cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
Now, did she enjoy that? I'm sure she did. At a certain point, she probably didn't know who anybody was.
Yeah.
Pretty, within a few years, I would think. And then towards the end, I know when Lisa and I got to see her, sadly, went after my brother passed away and we were in Los Angeles. I just was destroyed. I was just devastated to see her in that condition. And I know once she passed away, her son Andrew did explain. I kept quiet. It wasn't for me to speak about her illness or anything. But I know Andrew did share with all the press after she passed away how severe her disease was. And it's very sad.
And like you say, she had dealt with her mother having issues, and that Stella would not have wanted to be in that state.
Yeah.
And it's sad to know that you're a shell of yourself, not knowing what's going on. And
I think a lot of people struggle with that, like quality of life towards the end, especially if they're suffering from some disease. So it's very hard for Bob. Obviously, I can't even imagine where Stella was emotionally at all because she just wasn't really there.
Did he change?
Great care.
Did he change when she went in there, or?
It didn't help him. Let me put it that way. Emotionally, I know it was another thing to very, very much depress him. It's very hard to see someone that you worship practically loved, because I know he never forgot that she was a movie star, no matter what
Yeah.
was going on in their lives. And to imagine them becoming a shell of a human being, basically, and not really functioning and not having any quality of life, that had to have been personally for him very, very hard.
Do you know, I'm trying to think of how to ask this, but knowing some actresses that I have, sometimes they have a hard time seeing outside themselves. Did Stella give Bob the respect and the attention in his career and things like that? Or was she wrapped up in her own?
No, I know that she knew that Bob was super talented. Whatever dynamics they had about supporting each other's career, I'm not so sure about. But I know that he of course wanted the best for her, but I don't know how much he might have influenced her to do something or not do something.
Yeah.
And I do know that she was aware that he'd go to the studio for a long time. He was just working as a producer of these tribute records, and some of them were quite popular.
Yeah.
Randy Rhoads and some
Motorhead, there was one.
Yeah, there was a lot of good stuff. But then the business, those got harder and harder to do too. And I know that was a struggle for Bob's career. Anybody in the entertainment business is going to have these ups and downs, and all the artists struggle with that. That's why when Lisa and I saw Donny Osmond, and we saw him show his career retrospective, which is unbelievable. But
yeah, I've heard that's the best show in town, actually.
Yeah, it's amazing. But and it was a video thing that he showed, right? Mm-hmm. And then he's even talking about how he was nothing. He didn't know what to do. He had to figure it out. That's probably one of the hardest things for famous actresses and sometimes musicians as well, to navigate, to keep yourself relevant, to keep moving forward, or accepting where you are and morphing into something different that is fulfilling for yourself. And I have to admit, as much as I know they had a Hollywood ending, because they're in Hollywood forever, beautifully at rest, but I do think that at times both their careers were frustrating for them. And that's so common. I don't think I'm going to break anyone's bursting bubble here with that information, and I know that Andrew wants to share the story of his mom, and he would know her better than anybody. Yeah. Okay. But I just know that for the two of them, they had a very interesting dynamic that lots of times it was head scratching, but they loved each other dearly, and they went through a lot of really exciting things together, and good and bad, because I know towards the end it couldn't have been great.
Right. Can you talk about maybe how Bob's passing happened?
Sure.
Or
well, Bob definitely. I think a lot of those major changes in his life, Stella selling the house, that was security. You live in the Beverly Hills with her. It was as much like, by the time after nearly 30 years, it's like his house too. And then to figure out what to do, and he moved to Las Vegas, and he had a relationship that was at times really good for him here. He was told, you can't, Stella just needs to be careful. You're not in a relationship with her anymore.
Right.
Because they don't know what that is. But Bob, the music business is a minefield of a lot. And I know at times he had some resentment about that he wasn't appreciated enough. Of course he was, but he didn't feel it. And if you don't feel it, it doesn't matter how many things you have on the wall.
You've known a lot of people that have done therapy, and probably Bob needed it more than anybody and wouldn't get it. So
I needed it to manage my family, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I benefited from it. I did. And I was able to sometimes even talk to him in a mature way to try to get him, to understand. You got to see things a little bit better instead of the negative thing.
Right.
Because at one point, even during his successful tribute records, he'd call me every night at 10 o'clock to complain about this artist or that artist. And it was
just kind of part of his personality almost.
Yeah, it was exploding my brain, of which, of course, my helpful therapist at the time tells me, you have to not do that. Okay? You got to explain to him, there's boundaries here that you're willing to talk about it, but not like before you're getting ready to bed, that I got to hear about how crazy everybody is. It's just negative energy, and you don't want that around you.
And you almost give them the feeling that they can call and do it all the time to you.
Yes. So I did my best with my brother, and then at one point we did an amazing gig together, even on the Kiss Cruise, and kind of broke the mold where Kiss didn't have anybody that was Kiss content. And then to have Bob and I there, and at that point, he actually thought that I would leave Grand Funk, who is an amazing group, who has employed me very, very comfortably.
Legendary band, yeah.
22 years now. I wasn't leaving anything. Would I want to do some things like with my brother? Sure. And he got a little distorted about that, unfortunately. And I did understand his desire, but I also knew that he was now exposed to a whole nother credible audience of the Kiss fans that he could have done so much with it. But again, I just tend his extreme kind of ups and downs of his personality took him more to the, if it wasn't going perfectly, then he's down.
If it's not my way, there's no way. Okay.
I would say that's a good way of putting it. If it wasn't his way, then he just would be very unhappy and make everybody else unhappy. So unfortunately, towards the end, I had to keep my distance from him. I loved him until the end, and of course, when I found out that he passed away, I was totally in shock. And going through his home and seeing everything and finding everything, and then of course finding what was left of all of Stella's belongings, because he was responsible for it. And it was all safe in a storage, thank God, you know. But you know, there was still a tragic story there, because as much as the coroner's report was a heart attack, I just knew that he was not happy. He didn't
right, and that was something I was thinking maybe we could like dispel. Is like you were telling me, like there were some questions about whether it was intentional or whatever, and you said that he used to say, "Oh, I'm not going to make it to 70," but you found out afterward that that wasn't intentional, right?
No, and even when Lisa and I went in the home, we didn't sense that someone wanted to die. We do know that he was going through a lot, because he reached out to certain people about handling things, because he knew that he was just reaching a point. Look, this is in the middle of the pandemic, which was not a good time.
Anybody could have had something happen to him.
He had amazing ideas. I can't promise how fruitful they would have been, but he did have some powerful ideas for his career. Now the pandemic happens, everything stops. I know he invested a lot of money in some of those ideas. So now that money spent can't be even realized. The world's going crazy, you know, and I know that there was a girl that he was dating that he was only friends with by the time I met her. She showed up at the house when we were emptying the home, and you know, she felt really bad. She said, I was close to Bob. I know he was always frustrated with things, and he would share things with me. And I tried to be an ear for him and be his friend. But I did ask him. I was worried about him. And she said, I said, what's going to happen to you, Bob? If something happened. And she said, my brother will take care of it. That's what she told him. Well, he was right.
Yeah.
I would never abandon him in that situation. And that's why I've been celebrating his life. The video that I worked on with the help of Lisa was really a great closure for me too. And yeah, I didn't tell the story of him being angry at the end of his life. Why?
Yeah.
You know,
Why?
I wanted to share all the incredible career highlights he had that a lot of people didn't know, you know.
Yeah.
So by sharing that loving story, I felt like it was a great testimony to his career. And just recently, I'm still doing interviews talking about the body of work with Kiss that Bob is known for, that is so important in history. And I just want to celebrate his life. Although I am aware that I hope fans and people out there who aren't in the entertainment business realize how difficult it is sometimes for entertainers to just emotionally be kind of like stable enough to deal with things, or be mature enough to deal with things. And now I'm realizing the story of both Stella and Bob have a little bit of that. It wasn't easy for them. You know what I mean? And
well, much like every Hollywood story, either there's a happy ending or a tragic ending, and sometimes there's both.
With Stella, the health fell apart, right?
Well,
and then that
sounds like
Bob.
Yeah,
and he falls apart. But you know, I know that for Lisa and I and the people that love Stella and that love my brother, I still feel good about giving them the Hollywood ending. You know,
absolutely.
But I can't lie and say that it was always you know, flowers and roses. You know?
It isn't for anybody.
Right,
you know,
exactly.
yeah.
But that's why I think it's real important to recognize who you are, what you can contribute, what your highlights in your life, and to hopefully celebrate them. And in a way, look, when I was left behind, when Kiss went back in makeup, I didn't enjoy talking about Kiss. I didn't enjoy even wanting to listen to any of that stuff, or watch that stuff. And now every day of my life is involved with my music career and my relationship to Kiss, and I celebrate it. You know, I mean, I stay away from something that's negative of it, but I like to celebrate it because I'm so proud of it.
Right, but I mean, hey, you know, I once heard Billy Corgan say, he said, you know, I used to get so mad when people would say, play this song. And he goes, and then I realized one day, if my car broke down anywhere in America, it's a good chance somebody's going to know who I am. And I'll be glad that they knew that one song. So, so I mean, it's like you said about Bob, sometimes it's hard to get past what you didn't get to accomplish yet. But you got to remember, all the epic things you have, just like you. I mean, you have done an amazing body of work that some people would be happy to have 1 year of your career, let alone the decades you've had to master
No, I agree.
the business, you know?
And Stella, not me knowing her that well, I could never understood. There was always this tension about Elvis, and that's something that Andrew explained to us, but I'll let him explain that.
Oh, excellent. So I will link Bruce's video about Bob, your tribute to Bob.
It's called Larger Than Life.
Yeah, and keep an eye out for an upcoming Stella Stevens documentary by her son, Andrew.
Yeah, Andrew's working on something, and he did interview Lisa and I. He did some filming over at Hollywood Forever, as well. So I think I'm real interested to see it.
He'll have a very interesting perspective because he was born I think she was 15 or 16 when he was born, and then she went and kind of started her career while his grandmother raised him. So he may have interesting perspective.
I bet he does. And just for the Kiss fans out there, of course, to know that Andrew used to film Shannon Tweed quite often at Gene's house. When he got involved with these, we like to call them Skinamax films.
I was going to say the skin flicks, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Andrew was known for legitimate movies, TV series, and everything. And then for a while he realized, there's a real market here, and he does that. And now I know he's doing really well with, he's teaching people how to direct and film and produce and things like that in Texas. So it is interesting how everything just is a lot of closure, a lot of new understanding of people, and love for everyone.
And appreciation coming their way.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I want to thank the people, of course, who reached out that we're now friends with, who are huge fans of Stella, that reached out to Lisa and I. And the Kiss fans always know that my respect for my brother and what he contributed is always going to be celebrated. So it's just, again, I want to, remember it with respect and with love, and then hopefully remind everybody what great stuff these talented people did. I don't want it so much to be about the tragedy of it, but let's face it, life has so many ups and downs.
And it should be celebrated in the end,
Yes, it should be.
Thank you so much, Bruce.